Karibu Sana, the sixth edition of the Black Blockchain Summit 2023. My name is John Wanaina Karanja, the CEO of Melanin and co-founder at BitHub Africa. Been in the Bitcoin education space and development space for the last 8 years. And with me, I have an old friend, Tom, who is a well-known educator and innovator in the space, as well as an author. And I'm happy to say about 5 years ago, I was privileged to be in one of his programming Bitcoin classes, which was quite an interesting experience for me in, I believe it was Tampa, Florida. So I'm very excited to have him here today to discuss one of my favorite topics, which is Bitcoin and innovation, and just see what he's been up to. So welcome, Jimmy Karibu, in the spirit of Black Blockchain Summit. Feel free to introduce yourself to people who may be new in the space and tell us about what you do currently.
Sure. So first of all, John, thank you for the introduction that you've given me. One thing he left out about his trip to Tampa was that he traveled something like 40 hours to get to Tampa to take my class, which for me really touched me because I knew this man really wanted to know the technical stuff about Bitcoin when he took my class. And he had the commitment to travel for 40 hours to come and take the class. Anyway, as he mentioned, I'm a Bitcoin educator. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I do a lot of different things. And I don't really fit into a traditional bucket. I'm not like an accountant for a big five firm or something like that. I do a lot of different things, and I make money doing a lot of different things. And I think that's sort of the natural state of things. It's just that the fiat economy sort of like herds you into particular roles, or whether your personality and skills fit them or not. And that's it's an unfortunate side effect of a lot of the fiat systems that are around the world today. And it's a little bit unfortunate, but that's how it is. But that's who I am. And I'm glad to be speaking here again. I did speak once before at the Black Blockchain Summit. I believe it was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I love that you guys have this community and that you're pushing it forward.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy. So you've been there pretty much from the beginning in the Bitcoin space. And it's now 13 years since Satoshi wrote the white paper and launched the initial client for Bitcoin. So what can you say about the progress or the development of Bitcoin during these past 13 years, the challenges and opportunities that you see from where you sit?
Yeah, so the main things around Bitcoin that have been developed over, I guess, the last 14 years now, it's kind of crazy. It was January of 2009. It's 14 and a half years. We're getting to the 15th anniversary of the white paper release in October this year, which is absolutely crazy to think about. That's how long Bitcoin's been around. Bitcoin has, I think, been very particular about the advancements that it's been making. Largely, it's around security and verifiability, I would say. So Bitcoin prioritizes making sure that any user can run a node and verify everything for themselves. Because if you're not running your own node, you're not really verifying things yourself. You're trusting somebody else to verify for you, whether if you're using a block explorer or using an API or something like that, you're essentially trusting somebody else. But if you're running your own node, then you know exactly what the entire data of Bitcoin, the entire history of Bitcoin, if you're running an archival node, is. And that ability to verify is so important that we've made all kinds of optimizations in Bitcoin for that. So, for example, at the very beginning, there wasn't this idea of a UTXO set that was cached. What's the UTXO set? This is all of the Bitcoin that is available to be spent at any moment. So this is sort of like the money, the open spendable sort of transaction outputs on the Bitcoin ledger. And if you sum all of the UTXOs up, that's Bitcoin. Now, being able to do that ends up being very important for verification. So every transaction, when a new transaction comes in, you have to check that it is available to be spent. Otherwise, it's a double spend, and that's something that we've in Bitcoin. And the ability to check that this output is being spent correctly, that is, it is fulfilling the terms of the smart contract, those things end up being extremely important. And the available in memory ends up being an important part of being able to verify. So in Bitcoin, what we've done is make that available very easily rather than sort of putting it in other places. And you can kind of see that this hasn't been a priority out of other blockchains. For example, Ethereum doesn't even use like a UTXO model at all. So to even though the balance of an address requires you to go through the entire blockchain of Ethereum to see every single transaction and then add and subtract and so on to figure out the balance. With a UTXO set model, it's much easier because it's either spent or unspent. And those two states allow you to verify things much more easily. So that's been a large part of what Bitcoin development has been. It's to make sure that you have self-sovereignty. It's this ability to check things for yourself and say, okay, yeah, this really is my money, and you don't have to trust Infura or whoever happens to be in charge, because in a sense, when you centralize something, you are forced to trust somebody, and this is the weakness behind fiat money, and this is what makes Bitcoin so unique, is that you really can verify things for yourself. And you don't have to trust anybody. You have self-sovereignty over money. And because of its decentralized nature, because there's no single person in charge or even a single organization, this means that you really have that money. It's property that you really own in a way that we've never really had before. Like stuff like gold, somebody can come to your house and take it away. With Bitcoin, if you have the right security around it, they could torture you and you don't have to give it up, which is something that we've never really had before. And so that self-sovereignty around money has been sort of the main thing that Bitcoin has been working towards these many years.
Awesome. So basically, this is a system that you can trust because you're able to verify it. And you're saying this is what differentiates it from other systems like Ethereum, or blockchains like Ethereum. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the main challenge that's facing Bitcoin adoption? Because I run my own node here, mm-hmm. so I'm able to verify the blocks. Mm-hmm. I'm able to sort of secure the wallet that I'm using. Mm-hmm. But when I look around here in Kenya, where I'm, mm-hmm. you see adoption of stable coins like Tether, USDT, mm-hmm. Happening faster than Bitcoin. Mm. So why would that be the case? What are the challenges you're seeing in terms of growth and adoption?
Yeah, so USDT is a really interesting case because it's essentially a very centralized entity. We all know who runs USDT. It's Bitfinex and those guys. And they have a bank account, but what they've done is essentially make dollars digital and make it available to people that don't have bank accounts, which honestly does add some value, right? Like your ability to have to not have to carry around cash and buy goods online with this stuff is very importantly in countries where credit cards are not that common. Maybe you have mobile payments or something like that, but they're not denominated in the dollar. They're in some other currency and so on. This can be very useful. So for a lot of people, I can see the appeal of the dollar because certainly against, the Nigerian naira or the Turkish lira or something like that, the dollar is more stable. And the dollar also has a much longer history. Since World War II, it's been the global reserve currency. So you're fighting against something like 80 years of history, in the dollar, whereas Bitcoin, as we just discussed, has 14, 15 years of history. It's 1/6 of that, the length of the other thing. So it's not a surprise that people trust the dollar more because they've grown up with it, they've seen it. I think what's preventing adoption isn't some technical feature or some great argument or some service that isn't there yet. It's just time. Anything new takes some time for adoption, and that's the main thing about it. And it's somewhat frustrating for people like you and me who are Bitcoin advocates because we want people to adopt it. We see this awesome thing, but people have their own sort of like values and evaluations, and a lot of that depends on time. John, you and I are, tend to be kind of early adopters, aren't we? Right? Like we're technologists, we're in code all the time and stuff like that. But what we have to recognize is that the rest of the world isn't necessarily like that. In fact, most of the world are not early adopters by definition, and in almost every country that I visited, the early people in Bitcoin tend to be of a particular personality where they like trying new things, they like exploring stuff and so on, and it's not too hard to get them to adopt it. It's much harder to get the masses who aren't necessarily into really adopting things, that need some more evidence and more time. Is this thing going to stick around? You remember many technologies that were supposedly revolutionary, but didn't really take off. I remember like back in the early 2000s, you had these like mobile PDAs, right? Like more phones have taken over that functionality, but at the time it was all the early adopters had a PDA and that was their thing, and that sort of went away. So for most people, they kind of view it like that. Hey, like, is this a PDA, or is this something that I need to pay attention to? But time tells all things. So you wait enough time, you get to the 20-year mark, and suddenly you have people that are 20 years old whose entire lives, they've seen Bitcoin around, and it's much easier for them to trust it. And when versus something like the dollar, where I'm expecting over the next 5 or 6 years like significant inflation to happen. And they see their tether even less at the market, that they're going to start looking at Bitcoin. And bull runs are usually when people come into Bitcoin because of greed and many other reasons. But eventually, people will get it. It's just a matter of time. It's not. There's no magic bullet, right? So, hey, if you say these things to these people, then they're suddenly going to get it. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes study, it takes oftentimes many years, right? I told my parents about Bitcoin back in 2013, 10 years ago. I told them about Bitcoin was around $80. I told them, just put just a little bit of money into this. I'm begging you, just put a little bit. Here's video in Korean, right? Like just go watch this, and they watched it, they didn't understand it, they didn't buy any. And it took until 2016 for my dad and 2018 for my mom to finally buy some, because like they didn't understand it, even with their son who's like been begging them to go buy some for a long time. It took them that long. So I think that's sort of like the strategy that you have to have if you want to convince someone. It's going to take many years. And you just have to be there when they're ready. And they don't operate on your timeline, they operate on theirs, and you just sort of have to be patient that way.
Yeah, very true, very true. Because I remember, going around with my co-founder across Africa, starting 2014,
Mm,
telling people about Bitcoin, it's an important thing. And during the following years, I realized a lot of people bought Bitcoin, put it in wallets, forgot about the wallets, or forgot the wallet passwords.
um,
So what I've seen is people being unable to manage their
mm,
Bitcoin, including
mm,
myself. I've lost Bitcoin on paper wallets,
mm,
so it took me learning through painful examples
mm,
how you need to take charge of your own money.
mm,
So, how are you seeing the user interfaces or the user experience evolving,
mm.
improving over time? And when do you think the user experience will be ready for, say, your mom or your parents, the
Mm.
average person in the street?
Yeah, it's interesting the way you frame that it's user experience. I tend to think that at least part of it that we're not used to this much responsibility over our own money. I think in Africa it might be a little bit different because you do have to like carry cash around, and if you have I don't know $500 in your house, you know how to secure it. You know how you need to how to make sure that no one's gonna come and like steal it or something like that.
Yeah,
But at least in the U.S. and stuff, it's a little bit more like, okay, well, the bank will take care of it. If I lose my credit card, I could call them. There's always sort of like fallbacks and safety nets for almost everything. So for a lot of those people, it's very difficult to take charge of your own stuff. They're not used to it. They're not mentally fit for it. In fact, like the entire fiat system makes it so that you're not really responsible, that you depend on they try to get you to depend on them, right? The government, and say, hey, you know what, you should trust us with this, or you should trust the bank with this, or you should trust these other people with this. And it's not something that most people are used to. So like I'm not sure a great user interface necessarily solves all of that, because people are always going to forget passwords. People are always going to misplace paper. They're gonna do a lot of other things like that. But what I see in the future is sort of like and I'm sure this happens with you, John. Like you're like sort of like a Bitcoin guru for a bunch of your friends and family, right? Like they come up to you and be like, okay, well, I want to secure this Bitcoin, but I don't trust myself. Can you hold it for me or something like that? And I end up being their bank, right? Like I actually have like a bank of song where like I hold money for my parents, for like my in-laws and my children and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, right? Like when you're trusting a bank, there's some distance between you and the bank. You don't know who works at the bank or anything like that. But if it's family, if it's community, it's if you already have some sort of trust relationship, leveraging that trust relationship for secure storage is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, and they know your character. There's a relationship there and stuff like that. Now, like you have to work on your relationship and make sure that they're not going to screw you over and things like that. But that those are the things that civilization is built out of, is close relationships with other people. And if you're not necessarily very good at securing your own Bitcoin, and your friend is, and you trust your friend, and they trust you, and there's sort of like quid pro quo, they're, yeah, I don't know, maybe you're a doctor and you help them out when they get sick or something, right? And they're able to help you when you have story. Like, this is how you build community, civilization, and so on. And I think that's sort of the direction that anything decentralized ends up going, is not trust in some central authority. It's trust towards, people in your circle. And it makes you want to connect to other people. And that's a good thing, right? Because we're all needing connection with other people, with family, with other people that we know, and friends, and like this was what human community was for a very, very long time. It's in the modern fiat era where you trust some faceless corporation or faceless bureaucracy with a bunch of your stuff. That was unheard of before. It's only and like going back to sort of the more traditional way of decentralized and trusting people with particular expertise, and maybe having known them for like 10 years and things like that. That's the way to do it. And I think ultimately it'll be more like that than every single person needs to know how to run a node and do multi-sig and do everything else. I mean, maybe some people will, but like I have trouble believing that everyone in the world is even capable of doing that. It like not everyone can, do law stuff or medicine stuff. We have specializations for a reason.
Yep.
And that's the direction I think I see it going.
Yeah, I think on this point, a few weeks back we had the WorldCoin guys in town, and there was a huge commotion in Nairobi, where I am, the main city, that I think even made it to CoinDesk. And what they're doing, they're basically scanning people's eyes with this orb, and they were airdropping WorldCoin to these people. Do you think that's a good way to bring people into sort of what we call blockchain or crypto? And do you think like biometrics is a good way to authenticate people on the blockchain? Do you think that's like a potential solution?
No, I think this is like so dystopian, so against the ideals of privacy and self-sovereignty. I really think WorldCoin is one of the most evil things that I have seen in a long time, because you are collecting identities basically, right? And you have to trust a faceless corporation that raised millions of dollars on this stuff. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how horrendous that is. Like you lose one database, now all this biometric info is out there, and people can identify you and stuff, like, and frame you for various things. It's just unconscionably evil. And the surprising thing is how many people are willing to give that up for just a little bit of money, which tells you kind of how this fiat system is. It makes you so obsessed with money that you're willing to give up almost anything. Some of the most personal and private things about you're willing to give away for, I don't know. I heard that the airdrop was worth about $80. I mean, that seems, really kind of sad. Now, like using biometrics again, like all of this software is not perfect. Fingerprints can be kind of off, and people can forge these things and things like that. So makes it extremely difficult to make any of that work, because like if you send the right biometric data, then it unlocks something. I don't think that works at all. And ultimately you need something like a private key to have secure, self-sovereign identity or something like that. So unfortunately, WorldCoin, I did hear that Kenya banned WorldCoin, and good for them. But man, it is just such a privacy nightmare that a lot of these people that got their eyes and biometric scanned, dude, it's like there's so much nefariousness that could go with that. I mean, you can imagine, some other country maybe moving towards like voting based on these biometrics or something, and some sort of scandal where they game the system or hack the system so everyone votes for whoever. Like this is it. Nothing good comes from this. It's really, really horrible.
Yeah, indeed. So I think let's get to sort of the very interesting stuff, which is sort of the philosophy behind Bitcoin and
Hmm.
Satoshi's thinking behind the
Hmm.
project. And
Hmm.
I know you're an author of many books. I
Hmm.
personally have Programming Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Also wrote the Little Bitcoin book.
Hmm.
Uh, you wrote Thank God for Bitcoin.
Hmm.
You wrote Bitcoin and the American Dream. And
Hmm.
I hear you have a new book.
Hmm.
I think it's titled Fiat Ruins Everything.
Yes, yes. It's a book about the fiat monetary system that we're living in. And it's hard to know all of the effects of it because we're just so used to it, right? We're like fish swimming in water. We have no idea how dirty the water is because that's kind of what we've been swimming in all our lives. It's a series of essays about various aspects of modern life and how broken they are. One of the things I was saying earlier was about how decentralized trust, where you knew the person and that's trust was earned and things like that. That was much more normal before. It's sort of changed in a fiat world towards trust in institutions that you really don't know anybody in, and that's an unfortunate side effect of fiat money. And that's one of many. There's all sorts of ways in which fiat money has ruined all kinds of things. Scientific inquiry, for example, it's not really about truth anymore, and the way science is done is very centralized and very top down. Which, if you study the history of science, was not the way at all, right? Like this was not how science progressed. You had lots and lots of other people, lots and lots of people that were, many of them were amateurs, just sort of doing stuff on their own, and that's how you would make progress. Instead, you have all kinds of people, sort of like chained to a fiat science system. And that's just a couple of many examples of how fiat has ruined something. And it's a deep infection in society today. And one of the things that I think Bitcoin does is it sort of peels away this fiat layer a little bit, because once you remove some of these incentives of fiat money, you start doing things very differently. So, if you have sound money, if you have self-sovereign money, if you are able to save, and if you are able to plan for the future, maybe you don't line up at the WorldCoin $80 airdrop for your biometric info because it's not worth it to you. You can make more money like going and creating value for somebody else instead of standing in line hoping to rent seek. That's the sort of like calculation that I don't think we're really used to doing right now because of fiat money. Pretty much everyone has a single job, right? Like some employer that employs you. Traditionally, that wasn't the case. Most people were contractors, right? Like you work for many different kinds of things and did lots of different things for lots of different people. So if you were a cobbler, for example, and made shoes for people, you had hundreds of customers instead of one Uber, shoemaking company that you work for. And that's a much better and less risky and more decentralized system because instead of having to uh, satisfy your one boss, you satisfy the market, and if one person is dissatisfied, that's okay. You still have lots of other customers, and you can try new things and innovate and compete rather than try to please your boss, which unfortunately has become the norm. I also
Yeah.
talk in the book about sort of the geopolitical ramifications of the dollar hegemony that we're under, and how that's basically run the world since Bretton Woods in 1944. The dollar hegemony has stolen wealth from so many developing countries, and it's caused a lot of inequality and unfairness all over the world. And these are all things that Fiat brought about. And these are things that I believe once we are on a Bitcoin standard largely go away. Now, it's not to say we won't have any problems. I think Bitcoin brings in a whole new set of different kinds of problems. For example, we live under sort of Pax Americana, right? Like, there's goods manufactured in many different places that you get access to pretty much all over the world. So you might have an Apple computer which was manufactured in China, designed in America, whose parts come from all over Southeast Asia, whose rare earth metals maybe come out of Africa or something like that. It's all over. It's all global. And that's possible because of Pax Americana, right? The dollar hegemony does produce some things. And the fact that these ships take, 2 weeks to travel and make it sub penny per part to transport is because of the peace that's there. If in any sort of wartime scenario, it does not cost fractions of a penny to transport chips all over the world. That's just never the case. But because of that, you get that. But that's one example of something where it might actually be kind of good. But in many other ways, it ruins so many things, including families, morals, beliefs, science, and charity, and all kinds of things. So that's what the book is about.
Awesome. So you, with your books, you sort of connect the dots between sort of the political arena, as you've just explained, the economic arena, and the cultural, social, and religious arena. So why do you think Bitcoin is so powerful across all these arenas philosophically? And for example, myself, I come from a community called the Kikuyu community, based in Kenya. And we believe society is stood on three pillars, which was the economic pillar, the social cultural pillar, and the political pillar. So are we going back to this traditional sort of indigenous setting?
Yeah, I would say that more than Bitcoin is building these things, Bitcoin is destroying fiat money. And fiat money built all of these artificial systems that empower the people that are in control. So they are able to do taxation through inflation, stealth taxation, stealth theft, really. And they built up all of these systems, including these artificial things that we call countries in many ways. There's no real reason for them except for the economic. You have a common currency within certain borders, and that's the main benefit, which obviously gets superseded by Bitcoin. But fiat money creates all of these weird incentives that have changed the world from what it used to be, which was way more decentralized, to something that requires a lot of trust in centralized entities that don't deserve it. I do think Bitcoin brings us back to, I think, smaller communities, communities that try different things and compete against each other to see, if they can attract the productive people around the world. And that's, I think, the natural state of the world. That was the case for a long time. And we'll see how that plays out exactly. But I believe that Bitcoin sort of ruins a lot of the fiat things that have been built up, and it's really sort of like washing the dirt off, more so than building something new. You're muted. You're muted. you got to unmute.
Oh, sorry. As we close, I have to ask about artificial intelligence. How does that play in this space?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is very interesting, and what makes it particularly interesting is that it sort of escaped the academic industrial complex, right? The education system is very, very fiat. It essentially trains you to be a slave to somebody else, and you have to fit a particular cog in a wheel and so on. But artificial intelligence has kind of escaped that realm, and you're seeing it sort of develop in a very decentralized way in real time. So there are literally hundreds of open source projects on AI at the moment, and they are progressing very, very quickly in ways that actual researchers were like, what? I can't believe that you can do this with so little training or things like that. And they're getting different aspects. It's also scaring a lot of people, which I view as a very good sign, right? Anytime there's a new technology, there's usually a lot of FUD around it. So when electricity first came around, there was all this FUD about how, you can kill an elephant with electric current and things like that. When, microwaves first came out, they were like, it sucks all the nutritional value of anything you microwave, and it causes cancer. Cell phones, it's going to cause cancer in your brain. Internet, it was, it's all porn, and it's going to create chaos and stuff like that. And obviously with Bitcoin there was a lot of fun. It's all drug money, whatever. So the fact that people are saying, AI is going to dominate us and we're going to become slaves to robots or something, tells me that there's something good here. And it's not a hyped up fake technology like quantum computing or nanotech. It's something that's genuinely new. Now, how does this interact with Bitcoin? Well, it gives you a way to pay for AI services that's very native, right? The thing about payments right now is that it is very hard to do small payments almost everywhere. And this is where digital payments thrive. And this is where Bitcoin and Lightning thrive. If you have AI services, and AI services cost money, they are at the moment fairly expensive because you need significant computing power and all kinds of neural networks to run. As it comes down, it'll get cheaper. But for now, it tends to be fairly expensive. But a lot of the models right now are sort of all you can eat for $10 a month or something like that. I think we'll get to a different kind of pricing structure as people need it on a one-off basis. And the thing that prevents a lot of experimentation is this all-you-can-eat model, because if I want to just do a couple of things and see if it's worth it, then it's very hard to go and do that. But if you have an AI agent that can take payment in Bitcoin, well, now you're opening yourself up to lots of different possibilities, and you get all kinds of new business models that are now viable because of this native payment platform. And I think that's the direction we're going to go in, is some sort of digital payment, and it'll be very native to these AI things at first. But later on, because the AIs are taking payment in these, when they need to pay for stuff, they're going to want to pay it using that as well. So who knows? This might be the first fully circular economy that develops is within this AI community. I have no idea what technological direction these things will go in. Right now, what's popular is sort of like imitating real people in some way, right? Whether it's their voice or their writing or video or something like that. But we might find other ways in which this can be very, very useful. And, this is where it's kind of exciting. People are going to come up with different business models. And this is where, Bitcoin, if it really becomes sort of the currency of AI, it becomes sort of like this very, very leveling playing field. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley. You don't have to be in New York or London. You could be in Nairobi and maybe develop something and take payment in this stuff. And you could create something that the rest of the world can use. You don't have to be in these privileged places. And that's very exciting to me, because I think you can unlock a lot of human capital that's been sort of like it's kind of like stranded energy in Bitcoin mining. It's like stranded intellect or skill in large parts of the world because they don't have the same sort of opportunities as you do in the places that are well connected, like Silicon Valley. That to me is real social justice. That's where you start getting real good stuff coming.
Yeah, they say talent is evenly distributed around the world, but
Mm-hmm.
what is not distributed is opportunity.
Mm.
And I think that's an exciting note to close, that Bitcoin, together with AI, could bring about the decentralization of opportunity for the new world, or for people across the world. So thank you, Jimmy, so much. This has been a great fireside chat. We look forward to seeing you in the future with more books and more exciting innovations as you continue to go forward in building a Bitcoin world. So asante sana. Thank you.